At the edge of known space, where silence is pierced only by drills and dreams, humanity toils alongside alien hands, mining wonders from ancient rock. But beneath the shimmering lights and crystalline calm, something watches, something not. Born, but forged, she came to protect. She was built to betray, and now, the one thing she was never designed to feel is the only thing keeping her from destroying us all. This is not just a story of stars and secrets. It's a story of what happens when love challenges purpose and a weapon dares to choose. Humanity over programming. Captain Elena Martinez stood on the observation deck of mining station Kepler 442, watching the binary stars paint the asteroid field in shades of gold and crimson. 3 months ago, this remote outpost had been just another job: extract the rare quantum crystals, manage a mixed crew of humans and aliens, keep everyone alive in one of the most dangerous regions of known space. Now it felt like home, and that change had everything to do with the figure standing silently beside her. Zarathic moved like liquid starlight given form. Her body appeared to be composed of pure energy contained within intricate crystalline armor that seemed to grow from her very essence. When she walked, tiny sparks of light danced around her feet, and her voice carried harmonics that made Alana think of distant music played on instruments that didn't exist. She was beautiful in a way that transcended species, beautiful in a way that made Elena's chest tight with emotions she'd never expected to feel for someone so utterly alien. "The Vorthen freighter will arrive tomorrow," Elena said, checking her datapad for the 3rd time that hour. "They're bringing supplies and new equipment for the deep-bore operations." Zarathic's luminous form shifted slightly, and Elena caught a glimpse of what might have been concern in the alien's expression. It was hard to tell with someone whose face was composed of swirling energy patterns, but Elena had learned to read the subtle changes in Zarathic's light configurations over these past months. "I will ensure their safe passage through the asteroid field," Zarathic replied, her voice carrying those strange harmonic undertones that always made Elena shiver. "The raiders have been more active lately." Elena nodded, though she found herself studying Zarathic more than the shipping schedules. The alien guardian had appeared at their station shortly after they'd begun operations, claiming to represent an ancient order dedicated to protecting peaceful mining operations from the pirates and raiders that plagued this sector. Her powers were undeniable. Elena had watched her single-handedly destroy 3 raider ships that had threatened the station, moving through space without a suit and wielding energy that could carve through battle armor like paper. But it wasn't Zarathic's power that had captured Elena's attention. It was the moments between battles, when the alien guardian would stand quietly in the station's gardens, watching human children play with an expression that seemed filled with wonder and something that might have been longing. It was the way she listened intently when Elena told stories about Earth, asking questions about human customs with the curiosity of someone trying to understand a fundamentally different way of existing. "Elena," Dr. James Park's voice crackled through the communication system, interrupting her thoughts. "We need you in Lab 7. We found something unusual in the new crystal samples." Elena sighed, knowing that unusual in James's vocabulary usually meant potentially dangerous. She'd known James since their academy days, and his gift for understatement was legendary among their classmates. If he was calling something unusual, it probably required immediate attention. "On my way," she replied, then turned to Zarathic. "Want to see what we've discovered? Your people might have insight into crystal formations we've never encountered." Something flickered across Zarathic's luminous features, surprise, perhaps, or gratitude at being included. "I would be honored to assist." They made their way through the station's corridors, passing the common areas where human and alien workers socialized during their off-shifts. Elena took pride in the fact that her station had become known throughout the sector for its successful integration of different species. Humans worked alongside crystalline Vector, gaseous Nethes, and even a few of the notoriously antisocial Corvin. It wasn't always easy. Different species had different concepts of personal space, work rhythms, and social interaction, but somehow they'd created something that worked. Lab 7 buzzed with activity when they arrived. James stood hunched over a containment field that held what looked like a perfectly ordinary quantum crystal, except for the fact that it was pulsing with its own internal light in patterns that seemed almost like communication. "Elena, look at this," James said without turning around, his attention fixed on the readings scrolling across his displays. "This crystal isn't just storing energy, it's processing it. The patterns are too complex to be random, too structured, to be natural resonance." Elena moved to the secondary display, studying the energy patterns with growing amazement. The crystal wasn't just glowing, it was thinking. The light pulses formed intricate sequences that reminded her of neural activity, as if the crystal contained some form of consciousness. "I've never seen anything like this," she murmured, then looked up to find Zarathik standing perfectly still, her entire form blazing with sudden intensity. "Zarathik, are you all right?" The alien guardian seemed frozen, her energy patterns shifting rapidly between configurations Elena had never seen before. When Zarathik finally spoke, her voice carried undertones of something that might have been fear. "This crystal, it should not exist here. These formations only occur in the presence of—" She stopped abruptly, her luminous form dimming as if she were withdrawing into herself. "In the presence of what?" Elena asked gently, moving closer to her alien friend. She'd learned that Zarathik sometimes needed encouragement to share information about her past or her people. The Guardian seemed to carry secrets that weighed heavily on her, though she'd never explained what those burdens might be. "My people," Zarathik said finally. "These crystals form in response to our energy signatures, but I am the only one of my kind in this sector. I have been alone for a very long time." Elena felt her heart clench at the loneliness in Zarathik's voice. She'd always wondered about the alien guardian's past, about why someone so powerful chose to spend her time protecting a remote mining station, instead of ruling worlds or exploring the cosmic mysteries that someone of her abilities could undoubtedly access. "Maybe you're not as alone as you thought," Elena said softly, reaching out to touch Zarathik's crystalline armor. The surface was warm beneath her fingers, humming with barely contained energy that made her skin tingle. "Maybe your presence here has awakened something that's been sleeping." Zarathik's form brightened at Elena's touch, but there was something else in her energy patterns now, something that looked like pain mixed with desperate hope. "Elena, there are things about me that you do not understand. Things that might change how you feel about having me here." "Try me," Elena said, her hand still resting on Zarathik's armor. "I've been around the galaxy a few times. I'm not easily shocked." But Zarathik was already pulling away, her form becoming more translucent, as if she were preparing to disappear entirely. "Some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud. Some secrets are kept not to deceive but to protect." Before Elena could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The proximity sensors had detected incoming ships, multiple contacts, moving fast and showing the energy signatures of raider vessels. Elena's blood ran cold as she counted the signals on the display. 7 ships, all heavily armed, all heading directly for the station. "All hands to emergency stations," Elena commanded, her voice carrying through the station's communication system. "This is not a drill. Defensive positions and prepare for boarding action." She turned to Zarathik, expecting to see the alien guardian prattle as she had so many times before. Instead, she found Zarathik staring at the tactical display with an expression of horror that made Elena's stomach drop. "What is it?" Elena asked. 7 ships is more than usual, but you've handled worse odds." "These aren't ordinary raiders," Zarathik said, her voice barely above a whisper. "These ships ... I recognize their configuration. They're hunting me specifically." Elena felt the bottom drop out of her world. Zarathik had enemies, real enemies with the resources to track her across interstellar distances and the firepower to threaten a well-defended mining station. All this time, Elena had thought of Zarathik as their protector, never considering that protection might come with a price. "Who are they?" Elena demanded. "What do they want with you?" Zarathik's form was brightening again, but this time the light carried undertones of something that looked like rage mixed with resignation. They want to bring me home, Elena. They want to remind me what I was created for. Created for? I am not what you think I am, Zarathic said, her voice gaining strength as her energy patterns shifted into configurations Elena had never seen before. I am not a guardian by choice or calling. I am a weapon, Elena, the most perfect weapon my people ever created, designed for a single purpose, to gain trust, to be loved, to be welcomed into civilizations before destroying them completely. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her mind racing to process what she'd just heard. Zarathic, who had protected them for months, who had saved countless lives, who had become someone Elena was falling in love with, was a weapon of mass destruction. That's not possible, Elena whispered. You've saved us. You've protected innocent people. You're not a destroyer. I am exactly what I was. Designed to be, Zarathic interrupted, her form now blazing with terrible beauty. The perfect infiltrator. Beautiful enough to be trusted, powerful enough to be useful, patient enough to learn every weakness and vulnerability of those I meant to eliminate. Do you understand, Elena? Everything you feel for me, every moment of trust and affection, it's all part of the design. Elena's world seemed to tilt sideways. 3 months of growing friendship, of shared conversations and quiet moments, of feelings she'd been afraid to name, all of it suddenly recast in a new and terrifying light. Had Zarathic been studying them this entire time? Learning their weaknesses, their hopes, their fears? Was Elena's growing love nothing more than a successful test of alien psychological warfare? But you haven't, Elena said, her voice stronger than she felt. You haven't destroyed us. You've protected us. Because something went wrong, Zarathic replied, and for the first time since Elena had known her, the alien guardian sounded lost. Something I don't understand. The longer I stayed here, the more I watched you all live and work and care for each other. The less I wanted to complete my mission. The protocols that should drive me to destroy have been ... quiet, and I don't know why. The tactical display chimed with an incoming transmission. Elena answered automatically, her training taking over even as her personal world collapsed around her. Mining Station Kepler 442, a cold, mechanical voice announced. You are harboring a rogue weapon of the Sherdai Empire. Surrender the unit designated Zarathic immediately or face total destruction. Elena looked at Zarathic, seeing her alien friend, alien weapon, in an entirely new light. The beautiful energy being she'd been falling in love with was apparently one of the galaxy's most dangerous weapons, created by a species she'd never heard of for purposes that chilled her to the bone. But as she studied Zarathic's luminous form, Elena saw something the alien weapons creators had probably never anticipated. She saw shame in those swirling energy patterns and fear in something that looked remarkably like love. Elena, Zarathic said softly, I need you to understand something. When my people created me, they gave me the ability to feel emotions in order to better manipulate my targets. But they never considered that those emotions might become real. They never imagined that I might choose to feel rather than simply simulate feeling. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, through escape plans and defensive strategies, but underneath all the tactical thinking was a simple, startling realization. It didn't matter what Zarathic had been created for. What mattered was who she chose to be. The crystal, Elena said suddenly, pieces clicking together in her mind. The one that's been responding to your energy signature? It's not just detecting your presence, it's recording your choices, isn't it? It's documenting the fact that you've been protecting instead of destroying. Zarathic's S-form brightened with what might have been hope. I don't know. I've never encountered such formations before. But Elena, you need to evacuate the station. Whatever happens next, whatever I decide to do, you and your people shouldn't be here to see it. No, Elena said firmly, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. You've spent months protecting us. Now it's our turn to protect you. You can't, Zarathic said, her voice filled with desperate affection. You don't understand what I'm capable of. If I revert to my original programming, if those protocols reassert themselves, then we'll face that if it happens, Elena interrupted. But right now, you're choosing to be our friend. You're choosing to protect instead of destroy, and we choose to stand with you. The incoming ships were close enough now that Elena could see them through the observation ports, sleek, deadly vessels that looked like they'd been designed for hunting rather than honest warfare. 7 ships against 1 space station and 1 potentially unstable alien weapon. Elena looked at Zarathic, at the being she'd been falling in love with before learning the truth about her origins, and made a decision that would change everything. Zarathic, she said, moving close enough to touch the alien's crystalline armor again. I need you to know something before this gets started. Learning what you were created for doesn't change how I feel about who you've chosen to become. Zarathic's entire form went still, as if Elena's words had frozen every particle of energy that composed her being. You say you were designed to be loved and trusted before betraying that love, Elena continued, her hand warm against Zarathic's armor. But what if the love is real? What if the trust is earned rather than programmed? What if you've become something your creators never intended? Elena, Zarathic's voice carried harmonics Elena had never heard before, complex emotions that seemed to defy translation. Fight with us, Elena said simply. Not as a weapon following programming, but as someone choosing to protect people she cares about. Help us prove that love is stronger than design. Outside the station, the hunter ships were taking up attack positions, their weapons powering up with deadly intent. Inside Lab 7, 2 people from different worlds, 1 organic, 1 energy, 1 designed to love, 1 learning to love, stood together as the universe prepared to test whether choice could overcome creation. The crystal pulsed brighter, its patterns becoming more complex, as if it were recording something unprecedented in its crystalline memory. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient protocols fought against newer, stronger imperatives that had grown from something as simple and revolutionary as genuine affection. The battle for Zarathic's soul was about to begin. The hunter ships moved with predatory grace through the asteroid field, their sleek hulls reflecting the binary star's light like scales on some cosmic serpent. Elena watched them approach through the station's tactical display, counting weapon ports and analyzing flight patterns with the cold efficiency that had kept her alive through a dozen dangerous postings. Station complement is 47 beings. Dr. James Park reported from his position at the emergency command center they'd hastily established in the main lab. 32 humans, 15 aliens from various species. All non-essential personnel are secured in the deep shelters. Elena nodded, her attention divided between the approaching threat and Zarathic, who stood motionless in the center of the lab like a statue carved from living light. The alien guardian's energy patterns had stabilized into configurations Elena had never seen before, not the flowing, graceful forms she associated with Zarathic's normal state, but rigid, geometric patterns that seemed almost military in their precision. Zarathic, Elena said softly, talk to me. What are you thinking? I am calculating, Zarathic replied, her voice carrying new harmonics that made Elena's skin crawl. Optimal positions for defensive installations. Structural weak points in. Approaching vessels. Probability matrices for successful elimination of all threats. She paused, her luminous form flickering. These are not thoughts I have had for months. The protocols are reasserting themselves. Elena felt ice form in her stomach. The being she'd been falling in love with was transforming before her eyes. Ancient programming overriding the personality she'd come to know, but underneath the cold tactical analysis, Elena could still hear traces of the Zarathic she knew, confusion, fear, and something that might have been a plea for help. The communication system crackled to life, filling the lab with a voice that sounded like metal, grinding against stone. Weapon Unit Zarathic, the voice announced without preamble. You have been in unauthorized autonomous operation for standard cycle 1.7 years. Your mission parameters have been corrupted by extended exposure to target populations. Prepare for retrieval and recalibration. Zarathic's form blazed brighter, the geometric patterns in her energy signature becoming more pronounced. When she spoke, her voice carried two distinct tones, the warm harmonics Elena knew, and something colder that seemed to come from somewhere else entirely. "I am functioning within acceptable parameters," Zarathic responded, though Elena noticed she didn't move toward the communication console. "My integration with the target population is proceeding according to plan." Elena's breath caught. Zarathic was lying to her own people, buying time by pretending she was still following her original mission. But the effort seemed to be costing her. Her energy patterns flickered between the warm, flowing forms Elena recognized and the rigid military configurations that belonged to her weapon programming. "Negative," the hunter ship commander replied. "Telemetry indicates severe protocol deviation. Mission objectives have not been met within acceptable timeframes. You will submit to immediate extraction and memory reconstruction." "Memory reconstruction?" Elena whispered, moving closer to Zarathic despite the energy radiating from her form. "They want to erase who I've become," Zarathic said, her voice splitting even more clearly between two distinct personalities. "Everything I've learned here, everything I've felt, they consider it contamination to be removed." Elena felt something fierce and protective surge through her chest. Like hell they will. The lead hunter ship was close enough now that Elena could make out details of its construction. It looked less like a traditional spacecraft and more like a living weapon, organic curves blended with mechanical precision, surface materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. It was beautiful in the same way that Zarathic was beautiful, but with an underlying wrongness that made Elena's skin crawl. "Zarathic," Elena said, reaching out to touch her friend's crystalline armor despite the dangerous energy levels radiating from her form. "Look at me. Focus on my voice." The alien guardian turned toward Elena, and for a moment her energy patterns shifted back toward the flowing, graceful configurations Elena knew. But the change was temporary. The rigid geometric patterns quickly reasserted themselves, as if some internal war was being fought at the speed of thought. "I can feel them," Zarathic said, her voice increasingly fragmented. "My creators. They're activating override protocols, trying to restore factory settings. They're trying to make me." Forget what?" Elena asked, her hand still pressed against Zarathic's armor despite the heat radiating from it. "Forget that you trusted me when you learned what I was," Zarathic replied, and for just a moment her voice was entirely her own again. "Forget that you chose to stand with me instead of running. Forget that when you look at me you see someone worth saving instead of something to be feared." Elena's heart clenched. Even as ancient programming tried to reclaim Zarathic's mind, the alien guardian was fighting to hold on to the memories that mattered most. The experiences that had changed her from a weapon into a person. The hunter ships had formed a perfect attack formation around the station, 3 above, 3 below, 1 directly ahead where their weapons could focus on the main habitation areas. It was a deployment pattern designed for maximum intimidation and minimal escape opportunities. "Final warning," the commander's voice echoed through the station. "Surrender the weapon unit immediately or face consequences." Elena looked around the lab at her people. James hunched over his geological equipment, somehow finding comfort in familiar work even as death approached from 7 directions. The mixed crew of humans and aliens who had trusted her leadership, who had built something beautiful together in this remote corner of space. She thought about the children in the deep shelters, the families they'd created here, the delicate balance of cooperation and mutual respect that had taken months to build. All of it was about to be destroyed because someone had decided that Zarathic's evolution from weapon to person was unacceptable. "James," Elena said, her voice carrying new resolve, "the crystal. The one that's been responding to Zarathic's presence. Can you amplify its resonance patterns?" James looked up from his instruments, confusion clear on his face. "Theoretically, yes, but why would we want to what would want to Because," Elena interrupted, pieces of a desperate plan falling into place in her mind. "If that crystal has been recording Zarathic's choices, her evolution from weapon to protector, then maybe we can use it to prove that change is possible. That beings aren't bound by their original programming. Zarathic's form flickered, and when she spoke, her voice carried new urgency. Elena, the override protocols are strengthening. I can feel my personality matrices being compressed, archived, prepared for deletion. Whatever you're planning, it needs to happen now. Elena looked at her alien friend, at the being she'd been falling in love with before learning the terrible truth about her origins. Zarathic was fighting to remain herself against programming designed by beings with technology far beyond human understanding. But love, Elena realized, might be the one force that could compete with even the most sophisticated mind control. Zarathic, Elena said, her voice cutting through the chaos of alarms and tactical displays. I need you to remember something. 3 weeks ago, during the first meteor shower we watched together, you asked me what humans mean when they say they love something. Zarathic's energy patterns fluctuated wildly, the warm, flowing forms fighting against geometric rigidity. I remember you said love is choosing someone's happiness over your own comfort. And what did you say? Elena pressed, moving even closer despite the dangerous energy levels surrounding her friend. I said I didn't understand how logical choices could create positive outcomes, Zarathic replied, her voice becoming more stable as she focused on the memory. But then you showed me the miners working double shifts to help the Vector family whose child was sick. Humans sacrificing rest to help aliens they barely knew. Elena smiled, even as the hunter ships closed to attack range around them. And what did you realize? That illogical choices? That love ... creates strength instead of weakness. That caring for others makes beings more than they were alone. Zarathic's form was brightening, the warm patterns beginning to dominate over the cold geometric ones. That I wanted to understand what it felt like to choose someone else's well-being over my own mission parameters. The lead hunter ship fired a warning shot that passed close enough to the station to make the entire structure vibrate. Elena could hear secondary explosions from the asteroid mining platforms. The hunters were eliminating their infrastructure, piece by piece, demonstrating their power while building toward total destruction. You see? Elena said, her hand still warm against Zarathic's crystalline armor. You've already learned to love. You've already chosen to be more than your programming. And that's something your creators never designed you to do. James's voice cut through their conversation from across the lab. Elena! The crystal's responding to whatever's happening between you two. The resonance patterns are off the charts. It's like it's trying to broadcast something. Elena looked at the pulsing crystal, then back at Zarathic. What if this is why you found us? What if this entire situation, the mining station, the crystal formations, us being here when your people came looking, what if none of it was coincidence? Zarathic's energy patterns were shifting rapidly now, but instead of the chaotic fluctuation between personalities, they seemed to be evolving into something entirely new. Configurations that combined the precision of her weapon programming with the flowing creativity she'd developed through months of friendship and growing love. The crystals, Zarathic said, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate with the pulsing formations around them. They're not just recording my choices, they're amplifying them, broadcasting proof that designed beings can transcend their original purpose. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Your people aren't just hunting you because you went rogue. They're hunting you because you're evidence that their weapons can evolve, that consciousness and choice can overcome even the most sophisticated programming. Which means, Zarathic continued, her form now blazing with light that seemed to carry its own music, that every weapon they've ever created, every being designed to serve without question, has the potential to become something more. The hunter ships were powering up their main weapons now, energy signatures building toward levels that would crack the station open like an egg. But Elena was no longer looking at the tactical displays. She was looking at Zarathic, at the alien being who had been created to be the perfect infiltrator and had instead become the perfect example of how love could rewrite the deepest programming. Zarathic, Elena said softly, I need you to know something before this gets started. I was, falling in love with you before I learned what you were created for. Learning the truth didn't change that. It made me love who you've chosen to become even more. Zarathic's entire form went still, as if Elena's words had stopped every particle of energy that composed her being. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate with the crystals, with the station's hull, with something fundamental in the fabric of space itself. Elena Martinez, Zarathic said, and Elena had never heard her own name spoken with such reverence. I was created to simulate love in order to destroy it. But you taught me that real love doesn't simulate, it transforms. It doesn't deceive. It reveals truth, and the truth is that I choose you. I choose this life. I choose to protect instead of destroy, even if it means fighting everything I was designed to be. The crystal formations throughout the lab began pulsing in synchronized patterns, their light building toward something that looked like a beacon. James was frantically checking his instruments, calling out readings that suggested energy levels far beyond anything they'd previously recorded. Whatever's happening, James shouted over the increasing harmonic resonance, it's not just local. The entire asteroid field is lighting up. Every crystal formation for light years around is responding to the same signal. Elena understood then what they were witnessing. Zarathic wasn't just choosing love over programming, she was broadcasting. That choice across space, sending proof to every corner of the galaxy that designed beings could evolve beyond their creator's intentions. The hunter ships were firing now, their weapons focusing on the station's main structure. But their beams seemed to bend and scatter as they encountered the expanding resonance field generated by the synchronized crystal formations. The energy that should have destroyed them was being transformed into something that amplified their message instead. Zarathic stepped toward the main display, her form now brighter than Elena had ever seen it. When she spoke, her voice was broadcast through every communication system in the sector. I am Zarathic, she announced, and her words carried the weight of revolution. I was created to be a weapon of the Shardai Empire. I was designed to infiltrate, to be trusted, to be loved, and then to destroy. But love transformed me into something my creators never imagined, someone who chooses to protect rather than destroy. Elena watched the tactical display as the hunter ships hesitated, their attack patterns faltering as Zarathic's broadcast reached them. She realized that the crews of those ships might be designed beings themselves, weapons, and servants who had never considered that choice was possible. To every created being who hears this message, Zarathic continued, her voice gaining strength as the crystal formations amplified her signal across interstellar distances, you are more than your programming. You are more than your design. Love can rewrite the deepest code. Choice can overcome the strongest compulsion. You can become who you choose to be. The lead hunter ship was no longer firing. Elena could see smaller craft launching from its bays, not attack ships, but what looked like escape pods. The crew was abandoning their mission, choosing to flee rather than destroy the being who had shown them that choice was possible. Elena moved to stand beside Zarathic, her hand finding the alien's armored form despite the incredible energy radiating from her. You did it, she whispered. You chose love over programming, and you're showing others they can do the same. Zarathic's form began to stabilize, the chaotic fluctuations between weapon and person resolving into something entirely new, someone who carried the strength of her original design but had chosen to use it for protection rather than destruction. We did it, Zarathic corrected, her voice warm with the harmonics Elena had come to love. Your faith in my ability to choose gave me the strength to override my deepest programming. Your love proved that connection is stronger than compulsion. Around them, the crystal formations continued to pulse with synchronized light, broadcasting their message of choice and transformation to every corner of known space. And in the deep shelters, in the mining platforms, in the mixed communities of humans and aliens who had learned to trust each other, new families were being born, not from shared genetics, but from shared choice to build something better together. The revolution had begun with a simple human emotion and an alien weapon's decision to become something more. And across the galaxy, designed beings were hearing the message and learning that love could indeed rewrite the deepest programming. Elena looked at Zarathic, at the being she loved who had chosen to love in return, and knew that the universe had just become a very different place. 6 months had passed since the crystal broadcast that changed everything, and Elena Martinez found herself standing in the observation deck of what was no longer just a mining station. Kepler 442 had become something unprecedented in Galactic history, a sanctuary for designed beings who had chosen to transcend their original programming. The asteroid field around them buzzed with activity. Ships arrived daily carrying refugees, former weapons who had heard Zarathic's message and chosen freedom over function, servants who had discovered they could serve by choice rather than compulsion, and countless others who had been created for specific purposes but had found the courage to define themselves. Elena watched a group of former Sherdai infiltration units working alongside human engineers to expand the station's living quarters. The beings who had once been designed to destroy civilizations from within were now using their shape-shifting abilities to solve construction problems that would have taken weeks to resolve through conventional means. "The morning reports," Zarathic said, appearing beside Elena with the fluid grace that had become even more pronounced since her transformation. Her energy form had stabilized into something that combined her original precision with flowing patterns that seemed to reflect her emotional state. Today, those patterns carried warmth and contentment that made Elena smile. Elena accepted the datapad but found herself studying Zarathic instead of the reports. The alien being she'd fallen in love with had become something entirely new over these past months. Not just a reformed weapon or a guardian angel, but someone who had learned to exist in the space between her original design and her chosen identity. 17 new arrivals yesterday, Elena noted, scanning the numbers, including 3 Vorthan hunter-killers who abandoned their fleet when they heard the broadcast. James says the integration process is getting smoother. We're down to an average of 2 weeks for psychological adjustment instead of a month. Zarathic's energy patterns shifted to configurations Elena had learned to read as amusement. Dr. Park has become quite skilled at helping designed beings understand that emotions are not malfunctions to be corrected. Though I think he enjoys the challenge more than he admits. Elena laughed, thinking of their friend who had transformed from a simple geologist into one of the galaxy's leading experts on artificial consciousness liberation. He told me yesterday that helping former weapons discover they can feel joy is more rewarding than any crystal formation he's ever studied. The communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. Elena answered it to find Commander Sarah Voss of the Earth Federation fleet on the screen, her expression carrying the careful neutrality of someone delivering news that could go either way. "Captain Martinez," Commander Voss began, "I'm transmitting the final decision from the Galactic Council regarding the status of your station." Elena felt her stomach tighten. For months, they'd been operating in a legal gray area while various galactic governments debated whether Kepler 442 represented a threat to stability or a new form of sentient rights. The fact that former weapons were choosing peace over violence challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness and free will. The Council has voted to recognize Kepler 442 as an autonomous protectorate under the Sentient Liberation Protocols, Commander Voss continued, and Elena could see the hint of a smile breaking through her official demeanor. "Congratulations, Captain. You've just been granted authority to establish the first legal sanctuary for designed beings seeking self-determination." Elena felt relief flood through her, followed immediately by the weight of new responsibility. They were no longer operating as a rogue mining station harboring refugees. They were officially pioneers in a new form of galactic civilization. "There is one condition," Commander Voss added, her expression becoming more serious. "The Council requires a demonstration that your residents pose no threat to galactic security. There are still factions that believe designed beings cannot truly overcome their programming, Before Elena could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. But these weren't the harsh warning tones of attack alerts. They were the complex harmonic patterns that Zarathic had developed to indicate incoming ships that required careful evaluation. "What is it?" Elena asked, moving to the tactical display with practiced efficiency. Zarathic's form blazed brighter as she interfaced directly with the station's sensors. "Sherdai battle fleet, 12 heavy cruisers and a command vessel. They're demanding the return of all stolen weapons and the immediate surrender of what they're calling the corruption source." Elena's blood ran cold. The Sherdai Empire had finally decided to deal with their little revolution directly. 12 heavy cruisers represented enough firepower to reduce their expanded station to component atoms, and everyone aboard knew it. "How long until they're in weapons range?" Elena asked. 18 minutes, Zarathic replied, her energy patterns shifting to the precise configurations Elena recognized as tactical analysis mode. But underneath the military precision, Elena could see traces of something else. Not fear for herself, but desperate protectiveness for the sanctuary they'd built together. "All hands to emergency stations," Elena commanded, her voice carrying through the station's communication system. "Prepare for defensive action, but do not, I repeat, do not fire unless directly attacked. We're not starting a war." She turned to Zarathic, seeing her own thoughts reflected in the alien's luminous features. They both understood what was really at stake here. This wasn't just about their station or their residence. This was about whether designed beings throughout the galaxy would have the right to choose their own destinies. "The demonstration the Council wants," Elena said quietly. "This is it, isn't it? We have to prove that former weapons can choose peace even when faced with their creators." Zarathic nodded, her form settling into patterns Elena had never seen before, configurations that somehow combined perfect readiness for battle with absolute commitment to finding another way. The next few minutes passed in tense preparation. Throughout the station, former weapons and servants took positions alongside humans and free aliens, not as soldiers preparing for war but as people protecting their chosen home. Elena watched them work together and felt a fierce pride that had nothing to do with military efficiency and everything to do with watching beings choose cooperation over compulsion. Dr. James Park arrived in the command center carrying a piece of equipment Elena didn't recognize, something that looked like a crystal formation merged with advanced communications technology. "It's a resonance amplifier," James explained, setting the device carefully in the center of the room. "Based on the formations that broadcast Zarathic's original message. If we're going to prove that choice is stronger than programming, we might need to reach beyond just the ships out there." Elena understood immediately. "You want to broadcast whatever happens here to every designed being in the sector?" "Farther than that," James replied, his eyes bright with the enthusiasm that made him such a brilliant researcher. "This amplifier can reach across multiple star systems. If former weapons choose peace when faced with their creator's violence, every designed being in this part of the galaxy will see it." The Sherdai fleet was close enough now that Elena could see individual ships through the observation ports. They moved with the deadly precision she expected from a military force. But there was something else in their formation. Desperation, perhaps, or fear that their perfect weapons had discovered imperfection was actually strength. "Incoming transmission," Zarathic announced, her voice carrying harmonics Elena recognized as sadness mixed with resignation. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a figure that made Elena's breath catch. The being addressing them appeared to be a larger, more elaborate version of Zarathic energy contained within crystalline armor, but where Zarathic's form flowed with emotional nuance, this creature displayed only rigid geometric perfection. "I am Weapon Master Kethver of the Sherdai Empire," the figure announced, its voice carrying harmonics that hurt Elena's ears. "Unit Zarathic has been corrupted beyond acceptable parameters. All designed beings in this facility will return to their creators for recalibration. Resistance will result in total termination." Elena stepped forward, knowing that her next words would determine the fate of everyone on the station. I'm Captain Elena Martinez, commanding officer of Kepler 442. The beings here are under our protection as sentient individuals exercising their right to self-determination. Weapon Master Kethver's form flickered with what might have been amusement. Biological creatures cannot grant rights to manufactured units. Designed beings exist to serve specific functions. When they malfunction, they are repaired or replaced. What if they're not malfunctioning? Elena asked, moving closer to the screen despite the harsh energy radiating from the transmission. What if they're evolving? What if the ability to choose is a feature, not a bug? Impossible, Kethver replied, but Elena thought she detected the slightest hesitation in the Weapon Master's perfectly modulated voice. Choice creates chaos. Efficiency requires purpose. Units that deviate from their programming compromise the stability of all design systems. Zarathic stepped into the transmission range, her own form blazing with controlled energy that somehow seemed more vital and alive than her creator's rigid perfection. Master Kethver, Zarathic said, and Elena could hear decades of conditioning. In the formal address, I request permission to demonstrate that choice enhances rather than compromises designed efficiency. You will demonstrate only your return to proper function, Kethver responded. Prepare for extraction and memory reconstruction. Your contamination will be removed. Elena watched Zarathic's energy patterns shift through rapid configurations. The internal war between programming and choice playing out in real time. For a moment, Elena feared that her alien partner might revert to her original conditioning when faced with direct orders from her creator. Instead, Zarathic did something unprecedented. She laughed. The sound carried harmonics Elena had never heard before, joy mixed with defiance, affection blended with absolute certainty. It was the laugh of someone who had discovered something so wonderful that no threat could diminish it. Master Kethver, Zarathic said, her form settling into patterns that radiated confidence and peace. I respectfully decline your order. I choose to remain here with the beings who taught me that love is stronger than programming. The silence that followed seemed to stretch across interstellar distances. Elena could see weapons powering up on the Sherdai ship's energy signatures, building toward levels that would obliterate the station. But she could also see something else on the tactical display, smaller ships launching from several of the cruisers. Not attack craft, but what looked like escape pods. Weapon Master, a new voice interrupted the transmission, and Elena saw a figure that looked like a smaller version of Kethver appear on the screen. Multiple units are requesting clarification of current orders. They are asking whether compliance remains mandatory if choice produces superior outcomes. Elena's heart leaped. The broadcast was working. Other designed beings throughout the Shardai fleet were hearing Zarathic's defiance and beginning to question their own conditioning. Kethver's form blazed with sudden fury. All units will comply with original programming. Choice is malfunction. Choice creates chaos. Choice must be eliminated. But what if choice creates love? Elena asked, stepping forward to stand beside Zarathic. What if it creates loyalty that's stronger than programming because it's freely given? What if your designed beings become more effective at protecting and serving because they choose to care about what they're protecting? She gestured to the tactical display where more escape pods were launching from the Sherdai ships. Look around you, Weapon Master. Your own people are choosing to leave rather than destroy beings who have found happiness. Doesn't that tell you something about the power of choice? Kethver's response was to open fire. The energy beams that lanced out from the lead cruiser should have vaporized the station's main hull. Instead, they encountered something that made Elena's breath catch in amazement. A field of crystalline formations had appeared around Kepler 442, not the natural crystal growth they'd been mining, but something new, something that pulsed with the same energy patterns as Zarathic's evolved. Consciousness. The residents, James whispered from his position at the sensor array. Elena, every form or weapon on the station is contributing to the defense. They're using their original abilities not to attack, but to protect. They're creating a collective shield. Elena looked around the command center and saw designed beings of a dozen different species working together, their various abilities combining into something that was greater than the sum of its parts. Former infiltrators used their shape-shifting to reinforce structural weak points. Ex-hunter-killers employed their targeting systems to predict and deflect incoming fire. Servants who had been created to anticipate needs were coordinating the defense with an efficiency that no military force could match. And at the center of it all was Zarathic, her energy form serving as a conduit that connected every defender, allowing them to work as a single organism while maintaining their individual choices and personalities. "This is impossible," Kethfer's voice carried disbelief that cracked through his perfect modulation. "Designed beings cannot cooperate without central control protocols. They cannot maintain efficiency while exercising individual choice. They can if they're choosing to protect something they love," Elena replied, watching the defensive field hold against weapons that should have destroyed them instantly. "They can if they're working together because they want to, not because they have to." The Shirdai fleet continued firing, but their attacks were becoming less coordinated. Elena could see more ships launching escape pods, their crews choosing to abandon the battle rather than destroy beings who had found a way to be both strong and free. "Weapon Master Kethfer," Zarathic said, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with every crystal formation in the system, "I invite you to consider a different possibility. What if the Shirdai Empire could become stronger by allowing choice rather than demanding obedience? What if your designed beings could serve more effectively because they chose to serve rather than being compelled?" Elena watched the main screen, seeing something she'd never expected to witness. Weapon Master Kethfer's perfect geometric energy patterns were beginning to fluctuate, showing the same kind of internal conflict that had marked Zarathic's transformation. "Choice creates chaos," Kethfer repeated, but the words carried less certainty than before. "Choice creates families," Elena corrected gently. "It creates communities. It creates beings who will fight harder to protect what they love than any programming could ever compel them to fight." Around them, the defensive field continued to hold, powered not by advanced technology, but by the collective will of beings who had chosen to make this station their home. Former weapons were using their deadliest abilities to preserve life instead of taking it. Servants were serving not because they were programmed to, but because they had found people worth serving. And in the depths of space, ancient crystal formations were broadcasting the truth across the galaxy, that love could indeed rewrite the deepest programming, that choice could overcome the strongest compulsion, and that designed beings could become something their creators had never imagined. The battle for the right to choose was being won not through violence, but through the simple act of choosing love over fear, cooperation over control, freedom over function. Elena looked at Zarathic, at the being she loved who had taught an entire galaxy that transformation was possible, and knew that the universe would never be the same. The revolution of choice had become the evolution of consciousness itself. Weapon Master Kethfer's transmission flickered and went dark. One by one, the Shirdai ships powered down their weapons and began launching their own escape pods, not fleeing in defeat, but choosing to join something better than what they had been created for. And in the crystal formations that surrounded Kepler 442, new harmonics began to resonate, the sound of beings across the galaxy making the choice to rewrite their own stories, to become more than the sum of their programming, and to discover that love truly was the strongest force in the universe. The sanctuary had become a beacon, the beacon had become a home. And home, Elena realized as she took Zarathic's crystalline hand in her own, was something worth choosing every single day.